How do you create a discussion guide that doesn't suck? How do you make sure that you're going to ask the right questions and get valuable insights from every interview you do? Today, I'm going to walk you through our process. I'm going to talk a little bit at a high level around what a discussion guide is and how to use them and how to build them. And then we're going to go through a couple examples. So to start off, at a high level, a discussion guide is exactly that. It's not a script, it's a guide. What we want you to do is have meaningful conversations with the people you're talking to, because building that rapport is a big part in creating really engaged conversations and leading to the best insights you possibly can. At a really high level, we start extremely broad and we can narrow from there. We're not really going to talk about our product, and we are definitely not here to sell. We're here to learn. The goal is you're talking about 10% of the time, they're talking about 90% of the time. So big, open-ended questions. No yes or no's, just big, open questions. Things that would require a long description in order to give you an accurate response. So that first question can be anything that's going to help break the ice. It could be, tell me about the last time you did this thing. It could be, tell me about what a typical day looks like. The goal here is just to get the conversation flowing. And as part of that, one of the things that we really encourage you to do is record these conversations. Don't sit here and take notes, because when I break eye contact and I pause to write something down, there's a natural response for the other person to wait for you to finish. And that doesn't feel like a natural conversation. You'll get a lot more out of people if it just feels like a dynamic conversation, something where it's just two people chatting. And as you build that rapport, the more trust that you'll have. So after we've opened up that first conversation and we start to ask more around our topic, keep in mind, the goal here is to ask a question where your potential customer could give you the answer that you're really looking for. They probably won't, but that's okay. What happens is that now you're going to find the things that are top of mind, the things they're thinking about all the time. There's a common problem with most startups where the founders understand the industry better than everybody, including their customers. And so it might not be the thing that they're looking for, at least not what they think they're looking for. As a good friend of mine used to say, nobody stays awake at night agonizing over which accounting software they need to buy. They're going to be agonizing over making payroll, making sure their taxes are up to date, making sure they're not in any kind of financial trouble, building out a runway. Those are real things that they're going to care about. Those are the things that they're going to actively engage in. So it's not about which software platform is the best. It's about, how do I solve the problems that I have in my own business? This is the same thing. We're going to give them the opportunity to respond the way that we hope they do, but we're going to adapt our process based off the responses we actually get. Our secret weapon through this entire process is going to be love-hate questions. What we're going to do is we're going to use, every time we ask a positive question, something that's about a thing you love or a process that you love or your favorite part of your job, we're going to look for things that are aspirational qualities, what you love to do, what you want to achieve, goals that you might have. The value of those is in messaging. So not only from a marketing perspective, but also how we're going to tell the story of the product that we're building. On the opposite side, we're going to ask hate questions, things you don't like, things that didn't work out, but we're going to dig a little deeper on those. We're going to ask why it happened, what they did next time, other solutions they've tried, and what worked and didn't work with those. The big thing about hate questions is that you want to dig into the specifics. You want to move away from the hypothetical and get to the last time it happened. It can provide a lot of value, both from emotional context, as well as looking at how they really solved that problem, resources they used, people they talked to, because those insights can be fantastic in figuring out channels to sell through, how they solve those existing problems, or things to avoid. And these guides aren't set it and forget it. Once you start doing the interviews, make sure that they're adapting to the stories that you're hearing back from your customers. Update them to use language that you're hearing over and over again. Make sure that they adapt and you're getting the answers that you really need. Make sure you're asking questions that are open-ended but have purpose. For the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to use an example company, one that's completely made up, but the premise of this company is it's going to be selling conversion kits for towable RVs, something that's going to take them from a standard RV into something that is electrified, something that becomes a better product overall from either an environmental and sustainability perspective, or allowing them to tow with more electric vehicles. We're going to split it into two different spaces. One is going to be the direct-to-consumer side, where we're going to focus far more on the actual hardware, and one is going to be on the B2B side. So how do I sell a piece of hardware and ideally a SaaS model into this company to improve their business? Now, my preference is that you're writing these things out yourself. It's a great learning process, but we understand that not everybody's done this before. So we've actually created a set of prompts that you can use to get your favorite generative AI to produce a discussion guide that's good enough. Now, I suggest reviewing and refining it as we go, but the prompts will get you something that's really good and better than most people write on their first attempt. Whether you're writing it manually or you're using the AI prompting, the thing that we need you to do first is capture a little bit of information. Using our example, we're going to go after the direct-to-consumer path first. Who do we identify as a customer? What are their needs? What are their aspirations? So first, the customer is going to be somebody who is interested in electric vehicles or owns an electric vehicle and either owns or is interested in purchasing a new towable RV. We're going to add that to some of our prompts or use that as a reference for our own knowledge. We're going to create a list of at least 10 pain points. We're going to use these pain points in writing the discussion guide in a way where we're going to try and make sure that we've captured all of them in our questions and making sure that the user could give us those pain points as a response. When you start writing out pain points, start thinking about how they're written. They should be written in a first person or in an emotional context. So when we start writing our pain points for our direct-to-consumer side of the business, we're going to do things like, I'm worried about towing with an electric vehicle. I'm worried about charging. I'm worried about safety. There could be a huge list of things that we could dive into on that regard. The other thing we could do is look at things that are tangentially related to the industry. It could be about your towing experiences. It could be about while you're on site. We could talk about the pains and struggles that exist across the entire industry. And the goal of this is that we're going to eventually create a narrative about how we're solving the problems that they mention, leveraging our technology. So even if it's something like, I'm concerned about setting up at a campsite, can we change the narrative of the solution that we're providing to address that specific need? That stuff all comes later, but that's the goal of the questions. When we start looking at aspirations, we want to capture at least 5 aspirations for every customer type, but we could do things that are both directly related to our solution and tangentially related. So it could be, I want to be able to have an electric vehicle and tow without worry. But it could also be, I want to have more time with my family, or I want to have less concern on my trips. There's a huge variety of things that we can use as aspirations, but I want you to capture those so we can use them as part of our writing process. Again, we want to give people the opportunity of giving the responses that we hope they do, but be okay with whatever answer they provide. On the B2B side, we've changed the story a little bit. We're still going to look at the electrification of the RV industry, but we're going to add an additional service. The goal here is that we're trying to find the problems that appeal to the owner or the lead buyer of an organization that sells RVs. In the example discussion guide that we've provided, we're going to talk a little bit about the product itself and the physical hardware that's going to go with it and the problems that solves. But we're also going to talk about a potential subscription service. How can we encourage better retention of our customers? How do we create stronger engagement? How do we get them to come back for services or products or accessories? How do we grow that into a larger market size? So now when we start talking about finding the 10 pain points for the dealership owner, we're going to talk about things like retention, about sales processes. We're going to talk about what makes a really good sale, what makes a terrible sale. We might ask them about auxiliary services or upgrades or other features of products that they might be able to sell. Warranty and subscription services for maintenance could be a great thing to explore. We want to understand how they sell, what they sell, and where they see the value so that we can change our narrative to fit theirs. Our solution might not have to change, but it could just be that we're going to change the narrative to make sure it works. So linked below is our example discussion guides for both the B2B side and the direct-to-consumer side, as well as our guide for how to prompt an AI in order to generate these documents for you. We have a whole bunch of notes in there to explain why we're asking specific questions. As usual, if you have any questions or concerns, get in touch with us and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can.